Hello and welcome to this short video for Sociology, OCR G673. Question is, outline and assess the view that male patterns of crime are a result of the culture of masculinity. So I believe this is part 4. Is it part 3? Part 3, okay. So we're looking at left realist view would be that with military style policing and discriminatory police practices. So we could argue that young males may be more likely to be targeted by the police. Stop and search and interrogation is more likely to affect them in the public sphere of the street. The square of crime, the relationship between public offender, state, victim, helps explain male patterns of crime. For example, fears about male criminality and threat to society. There's also the concern about young males being marginalised and relatively deprived. This is exacerbated by the media focus on materialism and consumption. Might explain why young males turn from young males from ethnic minority backgrounds to cities, low-income backgrounds, turn to crime as a solution to those problems of material deprivation and poverty, marginalisation. Left realists would argue that the emphasis on the culture of masculinity perhaps overplays gender, but they would argue that it is important to look at masculinity and feminist views, but also look at the issues of the competitiveness, culture of competitiveness and selfishness and greed, which is a result of capitalism. So the left realists are influenced by Marxists and would argue that capitalism and race is also important as well as gender. Postmodernists adopt the concept of intersectionality, which means that all the issues of class, age, gender, ethnicity and place simultaneously affect someone's identity and behaviour. And so postmodernists emphasise individual choice and the liberation of the individual, and there's a kind of culture of rights in the contemporary UK. They'd say that crime can be a result of trying to seek pleasures and thrills and to achieve control by young males. So you can see crime as a choice in terms of an identity. This is supported by Jack Katz. So crime can be seen as a choice in a kind of cultural supermarket with an array of different options. This might suggest that feminists are perhaps wrong to see males as passive actors or passive agents, and instead, we need to emphasise how young males may turn to crime as a way of exploring masculinity and achieving control, rather than seeing them as passively controlled by the culture of masculinity. The functionists focus on structure and culture of society to explain male patterns of crime, and say status, especially economic position and prestige, is important. So they might argue feminists overplay the culture and gender side of the argument, and they underplay the structure and the culture of society in terms of wealth and achievement. This would be supported by Merton, who emphasises how young males may innovate or adapt to their position in the structure of society economically, and it's not just to do with the culture of masculinity. It's to do with the failure to achieve in terms of wealth. The culture of masculinity being criticised as the problem behind why people commit crime who are male might be seen as overplaying the problem with that concept or part of society. Functionists might argue that the culture of masculinity is beneficial, the private-public dichotomy of masculine and feminine spheres might be seen as functional by thinkers like Parsons, who might argue feminists overemphasise the problematic side of society. Realists argue that there is a natural difference between young males and females. Young males are less able to control themselves or exercise self-control, more impulsive, and therefore part of the problem is the nature of human beings who are male. This will be supported by Camille Paglia, talks about dating as combat, nature's flame is sexuality. So male patterns of crime are not a result of the culture of masculinity alone, but actually to do with natural differences, not only nurture. So to be supported by Hershey argues that it's control, a lack of control, that explains male patterns of crime, rather than the culture of masculinity encouraging crime. We need to see it as something that can prevent crime if we use it to control young males. So that's the last video that I'll make for this topic. Hope it's been useful. In a conclusion, we want to come to some kind of decisive judgment about which of those views is strongest and whether we can fundamentally support or go against the view in the question. If you have any questions or queries, email daniel_butcher@hotmail.co.uk.